I discovered this a little while ago, and I think for those of you who struggle with changing colours and getting lovely colour schemes for your embroidery designs, I think you'll find this useful. Now, this website is free. There is a subscription and you can become a member, but for what I'm going to show you, you don't need to pay anything. And the lovely thing about it is that it has loads of different colour schemes. And if you find colour a bit of a challenge and you're not quite sure about how to mix colours, there are numerous palettes here that you can play with and look at and use for inspiration. Now, obviously, each one's named, and this one's called Pink Jellyfish, and as you can see, these are all hand embroidery DMC threads. And unfortunately, we don't have so many colours to play with. Well, that's what I think. But at the top here, we have got different categories. And I'm going to stitch out today another of the Graceful Ivory designs, but I'm going to change the colours. So my first, I'm going to go for a palish look. So I'm going to click on Pastel and see what comes up. Here we are, and we've got some pastel palettes coming. Now, they call them pastel. I don't regard them as pastel. I think they're a tiny bit too bright for what I'm looking at. So as well as the different colour schemes and the seasons and other things, you've got this one at the top, which is colour. So I'm going to click on the white and see what comes up. Right, here we are. Now this is a little bit more what I've got in mind, and each scheme has got 6 colours. Now you don't have to use all of them, and I would say that for what I'm looking at, then I would probably just use the first 3 if not 4, and use those as an idea. Some are too bright, but I quite like this one, and we have a very light grey and then a slightly darker grey and what I would call an ecru. And so I'm going to keep this up on my computer and bear that in mind for the colours that I'm going to use. So do visit Stitch Palettes, and perhaps it will give you a little bit more confidence to play with the colours of your embroidery designs, because remember, a design can look very different if you choose different colours. It also, the fabric you embroider it out on affects it as well. But the colour scheme is important. And as you can see here with these, we have several colours that are quite similar, and then we have a little bit of contrast, and it's important not to have too much contrast. And the other thing I always think is that if you're going to go for darker colours or contrasting colours, often they should be stitched out in the smaller elements of the design. If we were stitching something out and we did the larger elements in the gold and this shell grey that they call it, then those areas would stand out so much that the smaller elements that were stitched out in the lighter colours would hardly be visible. So that's just a few guidelines on colours. Sometime, one day, hopefully I'll do a series of tutorials on colours, because if you know me well, you know I'm passionate about colour and how important it is. So we're going to look at these 4 at the top here, and I'm going to pull out colours that I think reflect those and choose them for my next stitch out, which is the 3rd daily freebie. Now here we are at the machine, and we are ready to stitch out the next design, and I've got 4 threads here that I think I may use for these designs. Looking at the design in question, we have 2 greens for the leaves. So one of your options is actually to do both sides of the leaf in the same colour. Then we have the
the veins of the ivy. Then we have the outline which goes around the leaves. Now there's no reason why you can't use the outline and the veins. You can use the same colour. And then lastly we have the border and the stems. So with this design I've only picked out 4 colours and I'm tempted to stay with those. So I'm going to do the ivy in these 2 shades of, well, they're not grey because those are the 2 greys, so perhaps I'll do the ivy in those, and then I have the palest of greens to do the outline and the veins, and then no, perhaps I'll do the outline and the veins in the lightest, this light putty, which I love, which is 1229, which is actually part of the designs. It's in there anyway. And then I shall do the stems in that one. Okay, I've made my choices, so I'm going to stitch them out and show you the result. I've got a little piece of ivory silk dupion. It's a very slubby one, and I've put it in my 120 by 120 hoop. As you can see, I've only hooped the stabilizer. I've laid a small piece of stabilizer on the top, and that's held in place by the temporary adhesive. And I prefer to cut the top layer so that it sits nicely within the hoop. It doesn't have to overlap over, unless you're hiding a disgusting hoop that's got stickiness. So I need to go back through my colours and go to the first ivy, and with this method the temporary adhesive is holding the silk on, and so I need to fix a box around the designs. You will have the option when you download the freebies. There are freebies that have that box and an outline of the design, and those are called outline alignment stitches. So we're going to secure it by fixing it in place. Now, as you can see, this design has 2 leaves of ivy, and throughout the Graceful Ivy collection you will notice that there are many different versions of these leaves, different sizes and different aspects to give a more natural look. now, and this is just me musing, whether it would have been better to have chosen the slightly darker shade or the inner curve of the leaf. Now I've got the Sulky Rayon 1229 and I'm going to do the veins and the outline. See how these are coming together? Although the differences in these threads is quite subtle, they do bring the embroidery far more alive than they would if you stitched the whole thing out in one colour. I'm now doing the final colour in Sulky Rayon 1086, and I'm sorry I can't remember its name. It's a type of pale green, but I can't remember the full name. I'll put it up on the video. There is the finished embroidery design, and it's catching in the light from the window. I stand here, give it a bit more shade. No, I'm really pleased. That's the look I was going for. Not very different, but very subtle, and that was one colour change that you could make to these designs. And obviously it's the bridal designer in me coming out using these colours, and I didn't use any whites. Obviously I could have put a white in here and made it even paler, but there we are. That's a suggestion for you, and I hope you find the stitch palettes useful. There are some wonderful combinations in there, and they're just fun to browse through, and it shows you how what colours should I say, work well together. And until next time, thanks for watching. Happy embroidering.